The Evil Dead franchise is one of those few franchises where every sequel, every installment, feels like a different genre altogether. By the time of Sam Raimi's 1992 film Army of Darkness, the franchise had lost its horror and dark comedy roots in favor of campy action, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't the same as the first Evil Dead movie either. Now, if you know Ash Williams, you know that trouble never leaves him, and the 5-issue miniseries Death to the Army of Darkness follows that tradition. The comic acts as a follow-up to Sam Raimi's 1992 film and serves as a sequel to the 1992 movie, one that starts 6 months after the movie's events. Even if you never read the previous comics or somehow missed the movie, you can still jump right in. Writer Ryan Parrott takes the reins here, and he's built a strong reputation through Saban's Go-Go Power Rangers. Now he tackles Ash and the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, which is a very different playground, and yet the tone stays faithful to the cult films. Humor, gore, horror, strange adventure, and plenty of Ash's attitude all remain intact. At the same time, Parrott adds new ideas without breaking the world that Raimi established. Now, the major USP of the comic is the fact that in here, Ash's psyche gets split into 6 pieces, including Ash, which means that instead of one Ash as the hero, you get literally 6 Ashes, and one of these Ashes is his trusty chainsaw. Yeah, imagine that. His chainsaw is getting his personality, and in this video we are going to begin a brief recap of the movie's plot and its 2 endings before jumping straight into the comic issues. Oh, and I gotta explore the 2 endings because its knowledge kinda becomes indispensable if you want to understand the comic in depth. So, let's begin. Army of Darkness 1992 and its 2 endings. Now, the movie technically has 2 endings, and honestly both feel very Evil Dead in their own separate ways. The story itself begins when Ash Williams gets thrown back into the Middle Ages. Lord Arthur's men capture him because they think he spies for Duke Henry, Arthur's enemy. They confiscate Ash's shotgun and chainsaw, chain him with Henry, and drag him to the castle. Eventually, Ash ends up in a pit where he kills a deadite and earns his weapons back thanks to Arthur's wise man. After that little demonstration, Ash demands Henry's release and slays another deadite in front of everyone. Suddenly, the same people who feared him now cheer him as a hero. During all this, Ash grows close to Sheila, the sister of one of Arthur's fallen knights. The wise man explains that Ash can return to his own time through the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, so Ash heads out to retrieve the book. His journey leads him through a haunted forest and eventually into a windmill where strange reflections of Ash crawl out of broken mirror shards. One grows into a full-size duplicate, and Ash dismembers the copy and buries it. When Ash finally reaches the Necronomicon, he finds 3 books instead of 1. The trick had a phrase that read as Klaatu Varada Nikto. Ash forgets the last word and tries to mumble his way through it. He grabs the book anyway and rides back, unaware that his mistake allowed his double to rise again as Evil Ash, who gathers deadites into the Army of Darkness. Ash leads Arthur's men against them, using knowledge from books in his 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88, and he even teams up with Duke Henry. The humans win, Evil Ash explodes, Sheila returns to normal, and peace forms between Arthur and Henry. The wise man then gives Ash a potion so he can return home. Now here is where the 2 endings come into play. In the theatrical ending, Ash wakes up in the present and tells the story to a co-worker at S-Mart, but the original ending tells a darker story. Ash must drink 6 drops of potion to return home. Rocks fall and distract him, so he drinks 7. Instead of waking in his time, he wakes in a ruined future London where civilization lies in ruins. Sam Raimi preferred that bleak ending, but Universal thought it felt too depressing, so they pushed for the upbeat version. Now, be that as it may, the 5-issue miniseries picks up a few months after the events of the movie. Let's get right into it, shall we? The more the merrier. So the comic begins in ancient Egypt. There are dunes of sand, the sun is nearly getting a full eclipse, creating a diamond ring, and somewhere in the deserts, a deadite hand squeezes a human heart to pour its blood to be used as ink. The deadite says, "Our power is vast, our followers legion, but we lack scripture. Too long we have been without a repository for our endless knowledge, without a tool with which to wield our forces. No longer." The panels go on to show a deadite writing scriptures on pages with that same blood, and beside him lays a severed head. So you see, this was probably the time they created the evil book, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, a book conceived in anguish, forged in sorrow, and authored in blood. But it needed something else for its completion, the last requirement of this unholy endeavor. The book needed the final sacrifice. And yep, the supposed victim was Ashley Joanna Williams, aka Ash. He had been hung upside down, bound in chains, and it looked like Ash was going to face defeat and death. There was no turning back from it. Yet he argued his case before the three deadites, dying to kill him and feast on his sacrificed body. He asks them to let him go and says that he would just walk away and everyone could just forget this whole thing ever happened. But as you can see, he had not yet grasped the full scale of his current fate. Interestingly enough, the dialogue bubble of Ash was not really a smooth circle. Like, the outline was curly, and whenever comics do this, it usually means that something is not normal. Anyway, the deadites don't want to listen to any of that, and all they want is to eat his flapping tongue when it is all over. They want to feast on his organs and entrails while letting him watch what is happening to him. Ash tries to tell them that they should not be fooled by his awesome physique, cause it was just empty carbs and fat, but the demons weren't in the mood for all that bullshit. He was to be consecrated. As one of the deadites raises his knife and strikes, Ash screams and the panel gets painted red. But wait! Something is up! The scene suddenly changes and we are brought back to Ash's S-Mart. Turns out a mother took off her eyes for 1 second and a kid dropped a ketchup bottle or something, breaking the glass and spilling the contents on the floor, which Ash arrived to clean. While he did that, the kid asks Ash how he lost his hand, and Ash being Ash tells him, "Oh, it just got possessed by a demon, so I had to chop it off with a chainsaw." The kid finds it cool, but sensing that a young boy should not be told such stories, the mother takes him away. Ash is then joined by Mr. Pleavers, his boss. Now, Pleavers hates Ash's guts. In the 5 years that our hero has worked there, Mr. Pleavers has found them miserable, and while he thinks Ash is just arrogant and disrespectful, turns out the others like Ash, and because of a little something called seniority, Pleavers was forced to offer him a promotion. Now, the promotion came with a nice raise, but Ash knew that with the raise came responsibilities, and those were something he was not ready for just yet. In fact, he concedes it before Pleavers and says that he thinks he's more of a mop and bucket man, and he aims to keep it that way. Next, we open at the laundromat where there's Ash and his laundromat friend Michael, whom Ash thinks is named Eugene for some reason. Now, Michael, aka Eugene, is like a hardcore conspiracy theorist and believes in stuff like Elvis Presley being an alien trying to brainwash us with his musical gyrations, and the government keeping a watchful eye on quarters. Ash was anyway not interested in this bullshit, and Michael gets all the more sidelined when this beautiful young woman comes to Ash asking for quarters because the machine at the laundromat was all out. Ash didn't have any, so he instead suggests, and I quote, "I just used my last, but you're more than welcome to throw your load with mine, though we'll have to divvy up the underwear after." What a beautiful way to hit on a woman. However, Michael had some and he offers them to the woman, and Ash's plans get washed up while the woman goes to her machine. Ash takes this moment to ask Michael to stop helping him for like 2 seconds. Once he was done with that, he approaches the woman again, only to learn that she was, in fact, a deadite. Michael thinks this was an alien, but Ash tells him she was worse than that, and orders him to run. Next thing we know, Ash is being thrown across the laundromat like a rag doll with this deadite woman. If you're Ash, it seems that you can't even get laundry day off. She throws him out of a window, breaking it in the process, and reveals that she was trying to kill Ash because he was the chosen one. Until the time he was alive, the army of darkness could not rise again. If he fell, the world would be theirs. Next, she turns her attention to Michael, who was scared shitless and cowering behind one of the machines. But Ash wasn't dead, right? He grabs his trusty shotgun and returns to the building, smacking the deadite with the butt of his gun before shooting her dead, once and for all. The demon woman goes down, but not before telling Ash that others would soon follow. After learning that he is the chosen one and that his death would bring about the rebirth of the deadite army, he figures that the deadites would never really stop coming after him. He has become tied to the book in a very unexpected way and needs to find a way out, and clearly the answers would lie in the book itself. So he now knows what he needs, an expert in ancient Sumerian texts. He goes to professors from Stanford and Harvard but got laughed at because of his crazy story. And this new guy he came to, Professor Tuttle of a community college, even he was going to call the security, but stopped when Ash pulled out the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. He tells the professor that he tried everything from fire and acid to even a wood chipper, but the damned book would heal itself. It was impossible to destroy. Tuttle tells him that he was not really an expert of the occult and that his ancient Sumerian was a bit rusty, but agreed to help Ash. All Ash wanted from Tuttle was a code or a spell that could sever his bond with the book, so that he could once again live a normal life, and while Tuttle started reading the book, Ash started drinking. It was going to be a long night, but as you could expect, Tuttle himself turns into a deadite and starts pounding Ash. A lightning bolt hits Tuttle's office, and let's just say things do not go according to plan. Tuttle manages to pin Ash down and was about to end his life when we see a reflection in the mirror behind Ash. Soon enough, a machete slices off the deadite's hand, and lo and behold, the savior is a woman who looks like the female version of Ash. No, not like our guy's cross-dress version, but as if he were a woman in an alternate universe or a different time. She takes care of Tuttle, but more deadites arrive. But wait! We got 3 more Ash-like deadite killers at the scene, including one that was a dog and another one that was a skeleton. And that's where this first issue ends, with Ash's essence being split up into a woman, a skeleton, a dog, an imp, and, yeah, a chainsaw. I must admit, overall it was a lot of fun to return to the world of deadites and their nemesis Ash Williams. Much like Army of Darkness, this book by Ryan Parrott is equal parts comedy and horror, but there's a lot of campy action too, which was unique to the Army of Darkness movie. If you gave me one word to review it, I would say it is groovy. Back to the past. The second issue begins with an excerpt of a translation of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, written by Raymond Noby, the man who, in the movies, found the Necronomicon Ex Mortis in the ruins of Castle Kandar, and was responsible for unleashing an ancient Kandarian demon in the woods surrounding his cabin, which was the same cabin in the woods where Ash, his girlfriend, and their friends went for that excursion. It reads like this: "And the living will look upon their works and despair, for even with all their knowledge it will not save them. Their stories will not feed them, their songs will not warm them, and their dreams will strangle them in their sleep. Their lives will rot away like so much flesh, their bellies will be filled with their loved ones, and the age of deadites will begin." Back at Tuttle's office, things were going from bad to worse, and much, much worse, with each passing moment. The security guard and the janitor had turned into deadites, and even the lamp and the masks had come to life. One of them wanted to taste Ashley, the female Ash's fears, but she was like, "Nah, brah, not on the first date." The doggy Ash, named Dash, bit on the deadite's leg, and Ashley ended him by severing his ugly deadite head. Skeleton Ash was going to get crumbled at the hands of the deadite security guard, but the imp Ash intervenes, only to come in harm's way. Fortunately, though, the real Ash Williams came to the rescue of his little man and split the deadite in half using his chainsaw. And as I mentioned earlier, the chainsaw also had Ash's essence. Now came the time for Dash, the dog that once belonged to Professor Tuttle. In fact, all these versions of Ash had come to be because they were present in the vicinity when the lightning struck in the previous issue. I'll explain it further in just a bit. Deadite Tuttle was about to, well, eat Dash's soul, but Ash shot him in the head, ending the menace. Dash did not like the fact that his master had been killed in such a gruesome manner, but Ash reminded him, once a deadite, always a deadite. Once they extinguished Hellfire, the group begins to talk about the situation. Ash begins. He had had enough lightning strikes and gratuitous violence for one night, and now he wanted answers. The professor was supposed to free him from all this, but instead more deadites came, followed by more Ashes. It was now that Dash began explaining. You see, the professor was an idiot, and his Sumerian was worse than he thought. When he was reading from the Necronomicon, instead of cleanse, he said divide, and when the lightning bolt struck, it splintered Ash's soul into fragments, flinging them into any nearby vessel. All of Ash's original traits went into an object or a being in the vicinity. That's how Dash got the intellect, the chainsaw got the aggression, the skeleton in Tuttle's office got fear, Ashley, who was present near the community college, got femininity, and the imp was all about impulsivity. Being the promised one, Ash wanted help, and believe it or not, this was the help that he had received. Anyway, irrespective of what Ash wanted, he had to make do with his new friends. Now, the place was a mess of blood and bones, and there was no point staying there further and waiting for the cops, so he suggested getting the hell out of there, and the others agreed. He brings them to his apartment, where we learn that Ash Williams is a man of fine taste. Well, at least as far as movies are concerned. And how do I know this? From posters, of course. On the one side, you can see John McClane, and on the other, there was the Terminator. Anyway, Dash was looking into the Book of the Dead to find anything worthwhile, but he had not had any success yet, and more so because, let's face it, he was a dog and did not have any thumbs to flip the pages. So Ash suggests he just lick them to turn them over, but Dash reminds him how the book is made of human flesh and written in blood, so Ash just gets a taunting, "You lick them." Skeleton Ash was trying to blend in and was trying out Ash's winter clothes, taking suggestions from Imp Ash. Meanwhile, Ashley just came out of the shower but reminded anyone who wanted to go in that it hadn't been cleaned since, 1981, which, by the way, is the year when the first movie came out. Prior to this, Ash had had a hots for her already, and seeing her come out of the shower, he couldn't control himself from hitting on her. She was disgusted, of course, since he was pretty much making a move on her. You may think the worst a girl could say is no, but what if the girl says that she would rather shove her hand into a blender and make a finger smoothie than give a selfish, misogynistic fart bag boy like Ash any sugar? Whoa, that's harsh. She tells him about the trauma of staring into his skull and watching the life he was living. But Ash goes full victim mode and tells her that this was the reward for saving the world a few times. However, both we and Ashley know that that's just a load of bullshit. An excuse he keeps giving himself for letting his entire life fall apart. But their argument gets interrupted by Dash, who had found something in the book, destroyed the seed, and killed the tree. He explains that all the problems they have been facing are basically the result of the Necronomicon. That's the source, the seed. So if you destroy it, you kill the tree and all its evil branches. Ash tells him that he had already tried everything but nothing helped. The book simply could not be destroyed, but Dash reminds him that the book that he had was just a copy, and that they had to destroy the original. Now he had an idea, but one that no one would really like, and the next thing we know, they're back at the cabin in the woods. Yep, the one that belonged to Nobi, the place where it all started for Ash Williams. Upon arriving here, they meet Linda, Ash's ex-girlfriend, or what became of her. She attacks Ash and proves to be more than a match for all of them, but while Deadite Linda was attacking Ash, Ashley struck her from behind. Ash was genuinely sad for what had happened to his girlfriend and wanted to give her some peace, but she had purposes to fulfill. You see, according to the book, once you capture a Deadite, its fire will guide you back to the source. So they torch Linda, but this poses another problem. Another portal opens, and Ash knows exactly what it means. Another time travel. One by one, they all get sucked into the vortex and get thrown into the sands of millennia past. Yep, they end up in ancient Egypt. The book said it would take them to the source, but it didn't necessarily say that it would be in their time. And if you think about it, the first scene from the first issue now makes a lot of sense. What we saw was not a dream, but Ash's reality in the past after he traveled through this time vortex. And this is where the second issue ends. The Land of the Deadites. The issue opens with all the Ashes entering a nearby city, but it looks completely deserted. The local market still had its stalls open with food and other stuff on display, but everything was rotten, as if the locals simply vanished suddenly, leaving everything as it was. So, what was happening? On one of the walls, Dash discovers the symbol of Amenta, or the Egyptian underworld, or the netherworld of Amenta, as mentioned in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's described as a place of darkness and a threshold to the other world where the dead forms of a past life exist. Needless to say, this was the Land of the Dead, or better translated, the Land of the Deadites. They needed to stay close, because if this piece of land were really cursed, they could very well be walking straight into a trap. However, Lil Ash was missing. Turns out he found himself walking into a local pub and started drinking his ass off while the other patrons enjoyed the show. I mean, a little man was chugging glass after glass of alcohol, and it was a strange yet exciting sight. They needed him back, but they didn't know how. Ash suggested that Dash should bite one of the patrons, and in the ensuing chaos, they would grab Little Ash and run. However, Dash does something stupider than that when he goes up to the patrons and speaks to them. You see, These ancient Egyptians just witnessed a talking dog, and more importantly, they saw a walking skeleton and a couple of weirdly dressed humans. Oh yeah, Dash could speak a bit of Egyptian. Needless to say, the locals went after them, forcing them to run for their lives. Ash used the chainsaw to cut down a wooden structure, and they managed to outrun the angry, drunk Egyptian men. However, they ran into the Pharaoh's royal guards. The morale was definitely not high, and Dash figured this is how he would die before he was even born. Ash tries to calm him down, telling him that he has been in spots like this one before, and it always works out. Hearing it, Ashley reminds him that he had been in such a situation exactly one other time, and survived because of dumb luck and a chainsaw. To which the chainsaw says, "Hell yeah!" By now, they had been brought before the Pharaoh, a queen named Shintaknis. Shintaknis had seen a walking corpse before, but a talking dog and two pale-skinned foreigners? That she hadn't. And she thought to herself that the deadites kept getting more creative in ways to spread misery across her kingdom. When Skeleton Ash rose to speak to Shintaknis, one of her guards struck him down for daring to stand and speak before a living god, so we learned that she is definitely some kind of god. Seeing this, Ash took the matter in his own hands and asked Dash to translate for him. Ash basically addresses her as Queen Bee, telling her how this was all just a misunderstanding, and how he was from a future that was way more advanced than hers, and if she did not back off, he would use his advanced weapons against her and her guards. Of course, Dash wasn't going to translate that, which explains why a few interpreters take some time before translating what a certain president says. But the said president just thinks that the interpreter himself is not good enough. Anyway, Dash addresses the Pharaoh with the respect and reverence she deserves, and tells her that they are all on the same side, the side of the living. He explains how the future is also plagued with the deadites, and they were in the past only because they had found a way to rid the world of the deadite menace once and for all. Hearing all this, and hearing the dog's offer of coming into her service, she orders her guards to let the talking dog live, but the rest were to be impaled as a warning. However, before that could happen, the deadites, led by their deadite lord, stormed into the throne room. You see, they had sensed that the Chosen One had come to town. The big bad deadite threatened to kill the queen herself, but Ashley interrupted the heated exchange between him and the queen. So she said there was no need to go to a mini-war inside the castle, and proposed an alternative. She suggested a battle between them and the leader of the deadites. If they won, the deadites would leave Shintaknis' kingdom forever, and if the deadite won, he would get to have the Chosen One. An offer that only the likes of Don Vito Corleone would make. So the deadite had no option but to accept it. Now, this guy was powerful to say the least. He used his magic to summon snakes and swarms of poisonous insects, but to no avail. The ashes destroyed them all one by one. The deadite leader had had enough, and transformed into this huge monster and was about to land a blow on the ashes. But Shintaknis took matters into her own hands and removed the head of the demon from its body, finally ending the drama. Ash was impressed and, being Ash, asked Dash to ask if Shintaknis was single. Anyway, once again, Dash ignores him and pleads with Shintaknis to see reason, to see that they were, like her, on the side of the living and wanted to help. Shintaknis agrees. Dash tells her that they were looking for the source of the deadites' power and asks if she knew where it was. Shintaknis tells them that her priests say the evil came from somewhere beyond the endless desert, but none of the 3 expeditions she sent there ever returned. Dash requests her to show them the way so that they could destroy the deadites forever, but Shintaknis offers something more than a map. She tells him that she would, in fact, send her finest warriors with them in the morning, and until then, they are welcome to enjoy the finest Egyptian hospitality. The following morning, they all leave to find the source of the evil, escorted by the Queen's warriors. On the way, Ashley asks Ash what his plan was, and he says that he didn't really have one. He only figured that the Queen's men went in the direction that they were going and they all died. He hoped to eventually find whatever killed them, and that would probably be the thing they were looking for. Fortunately or unfortunately, I know not, they run into a swarm of demonic bats, who pick off the guards one by one. They were followed by a giant sandstorm, and within minutes Ashley and Ash got separated from the rest of the ashes. They had always planned to stick together, cause that's when they were the strongest, but now everything had changed. Although they didn't know where Dash, Little Ash, and Bones were, Ash, Ashley, and the Chainsaw were standing before a huge deadite castle, the Temple of the Deadites. It seems that they found what Ash was looking for, and believe it or not, Ash's plan worked. Let's move on to the next issue. Betrayal at Castle Cronenberg, the Temple of the Deadites. Ashley and Ash finally entered the temple, and Ash thinks it was the most horrifying thing he has ever seen. And that's saying something, cause we know that he has seen a lot during the course of his very eventful life. I mean, he wasn't expecting a beer garden oasis or Hooters, but he wasn't expecting Castle Cronenberg either. It would have felt more like home if only he could come across a few deadites or a monster or something. Ash didn't wish to go further in, and instead he wanted to wait for the others to show up, but Ashley asked him to grow a pair. While the two of them were arguing, skeletal deadites rose from the ground. Ash knew what he had to do and got cracking. Even now, Ash didn't want to do the whole heroic self-sacrifice thing, and all he wanted was to get out alive and in one piece. Ashley spoke her mind, and I kinda agreed with her when she said he was by far the worst hero she had seen. And good old Ash Williams just agrees with her assertion. Well, the man has honesty, I'll give him that. Anyway, Ash, Ashley, and Cheney fight their way through the deadites, but in an attempt to escape them, they move further inside the deadite temple. Meanwhile, our friends Dash, Lil Ash, and Skeleton Ash watch from a distance. Thankfully, they had also found the temple, but now it was guarded by scores of those skeletons. Lil Ash found it disgusting, but Skeleton Ash didn't take any offense. This party of Ashes knew they had to get inside, but they needed a plan to get past an entire army of skeletons without suffering a gruesome and horrifying death. But they would most definitely get torn to shreds the moment any of those skeletons lay eyes on them, or whatever it is that undead skeletons use to see things. This is when it clicked for Dash. Skeleton Ash could hide in plain sight because he looked like everyone else. So now they had a plan, and it was set in motion. Dash and Lil Ash hid under Bones' clothes, but they did not even reach halfway when one of the guards stopped them. You see, he had figured out what was going on, and now there was only one thing left for Ashes to do. Run! The skeletons chased them, but only for a while. Bones thought it was a good thing, but Dash was suspicious of this behavior. I mean, it was very unlike the deadite skeletons to let fleshlings pass them. So what was happening? Anyway, the next panel brings us back inside the temple to Ash and Ashley, who did not know what was happening to the walls, but they were all green, as if coated with something, and it smelled a lot. Ash, being Ash, was trying to stick to the tunnels that looked the least scary, and that was making the two of them travel in circles. Ashley, of course, did not want to do that, and she decided to chart her own course, and at the very next turn she somehow arrived at S-Mart and was met by Ash's manager, Mr. Pleavers. Needless to say, this was all very spooky and unnatural. Ashley immediately realizes that this was a deadite trick, and Pleavers was definitely not himself. In fact, he was trying to make a deal with her. He tells her that even if she and the other Ashes managed to burn the Necronomicon and send the deadites to wherever they came from, then she would just go back to being just another passenger in Ash's loudmouth, beer-guzzling psyche. But there was a way she could be in charge. Think of it as someone having a split personality, say James McAvoy's character from Split. Pleavers was basically saying that one of McAvoy's many personalities could be the dominant one and rule the body forever. Ashley shouldn't have asked the next question, but she does, and asks Pleavers what she would have to do in exchange for it. And Pleavers says that she must deliver Ash, the Chosen One. Now at this point, I want to take you back to the middle of the third issue. I didn't explore this portion back then because it seemed more judicious to explore it now. You see, the Deadite Lord mentioned that the Ashes would turn on each other, and that would lead to the rise of the Army of Darkness. Later on, when the Ashes were enjoying the Queen's hospitality, Bones asked Ashley if she thought what that demon said was true. But she simply shuts him up by saying that if an idiot like Ash could stop the Deadites over and over again, they had a better chance. But Bones asks her, what if stopping the Deadites once and for all would mean going back to being who they were? Ashley thinks that's not going to happen, and when the time came, she would do whatever it took to ensure that things worked out for all of them, which basically meant that even Ashley didn't want to end up back in Ash's psyche, and that's exactly what Pleavers was offering her right now. Now, let's return to the fourth issue. After her conversation with the Deadite Pleavers, Ashley is returned to the temple, and soon the two of them stumble upon the room from the very first scene of the comic book. You know, the one where the Deadite priests were trying to pen down the first ever Necronomicon with that severed head on the table? Now, there were just 3 Deadites and they could have easily been taken down, but there were several other skeleton guards, and that was posing a problem. Meanwhile, Skeleton Ash and Dash were also made similar offers by Deadites as Ashley. Bones was promised a life among his own kind, and Dash was promised a return of his former master, Professor Tuttle, only if they gave up Ash. But in the end, it was Ashley who apparently betrayed him. When they were all cornered by the skeleton deadite guards, she trapped Bones and Dash before subduing Ash and demanding to see the Dark Ones, as she had a deal to negotiate. Death to the Army of Darkness and one little dead end. The Dark Ones scorn Ash and his legs for rejecting the gift of immortality through an afterlife, and with the Necronomicon now ready, their reach would become endless. Each day would bring new souls to them, turning them into deadites and in the future to come. There would be no stopping them. It turns out the deadite plan saw the domination of Earth as only the first step. They wanted to take over the entire universe. Naturally, the stakes are pretty high this time around for Ash and his ashes. Ash and Ashley bicker over her betrayal, and he even threatens to kill her if and when he becomes free. Hey, if you think about it, the ashes are like the Horcruxes of Ash, right? Anyway, we return to Dash, Little Ash, and Skeleton Ash, where the roles seem to have changed. It was Scaredy Bones who was now the most hopeful and optimistic. Dash had given up hope, but Bones reminded him that the fate of the world lay on their shoulders, and they had to do something about it, and soon. But what could they possibly do now that they were confined? But Bones suggests Little Ash could squeeze through one of the crevices and maybe find some help. He does exactly that and manages to free the other two Ashes. Next they had to rescue Ash and kill Ashley. Again, this was all Bones' plan. Next thing we know, the three of them launched an attack, and it was now that we learned how Ashley and Ash had been playing in tandem the whole time. In fact, giving up Ash was part of their conspiracy to get close to the original Necronomicon, and it was all Ash's idea. One by one, the Ashes took care of the Dark Ones and managed to get hold of the book as well, ready to destroy it once and for all. They burned down the Necronomicon, except for the page that would bring them to their real time, but this posed a problem. You see, going back meant that all the other Ashes would cease to exist, but they had made their peace with it. The chants were spoken, and Ash and the others got sucked into yet another time vortex. However, instead of reaching their real timeline, Ash and the others got sucked into a completely different timeline, one that looked post-apocalyptic, much like the original ending from the Army of Darkness movie. Needless to say, Ash and his adventures with Dash, Lil Ash, Bones, and Ashley were not over. Not yet. That was all in this one, guys. If you liked the video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these lore lockdowns. Stay safe and have a good one.